It's a lockdown. It is Marawa TV. It is Marawa Moments. Going to be heading down to Port Elizabeth this time around. And why are we going to PE? Now, you might ask yourself a couple of questions, but you know what? I always wanted to chat to Rhulani Mokwena about all sorts of things. My name is Robert. He might read stuff by another Robert. It might be Robert Green. Who knows what he reads, this man. Welcome to the show, Mr. Mokwena.
Thank you, Big Rob, and thanks for having me. Finally, I'm honored to be on Marawa TV.
Thank you so much. My honor. You still owe me a longer version of the interview. It's Marawa Moment, so we cut straight to the chase here. When I mentioned the name Robert Green, I know you read a lot, though. You are an avid reader of something, 48 laws of something or another. Of what is it? Is it power? I don't know. You tell me.
48 laws of power. There's 48 laws of power. I subscribe to a lot of them. Don't always agree with all of them, but that's just the way I am. I'm extremely inquisitive, and I don't take things as written down. I try to read, of course, to increase my capacity and knowledge, and go beyond different themes, different understandings. I go beyond football. People say, but I read a lot about football, but I go into psychology, I go into religion, I go into science. Now I'm reading so much about coronavirus and epidemics and all those things. So that's the reality, is that I try very much not to restrict myself into one space and one scope.
And when you've got that whole 48 laws of power, because at times you got to understand that power, it's about gaining power, it's about losing power, it's about preserving power. It's got so many different dimensions to it. What for you is that intrigue and that drive towards knowing and understanding? Because at some point you'll be in power, at other points you'll be empowering other people.
I think that's a great way of looking at power. There's the power that drives a bit of if you speak from a more negative side, where there's a famous saying that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely, and that's when people are driven by self and driven by their own need to emancipate themselves onto other people. But the reality also is that you can have power, and that power is driven by your desire to serve, your desire to lead, and to be in power, so that you can help other people to succeed. And I think for me, I'm in that space where I try to empower myself, so that I can be a trailblazer, and hopefully give opportunities and some form of support to those that need that form of support at that particular phase of time.
At what point do you find that you get tested the most when it comes to coaching? Comes with the level of power, and a lot of people will be thinking, actually, Rhulani went to some team that has quite a few players that are quite old. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, Lenkies is 35, Tinye was 34, whether or not they're still there. Kamaldeen 31, Rachele 30, Mashaba 31, and you 33. And then you got to come through and be the coach. Now, they're probably used to some older version, or at times even a European version of old, that is teaching them or helping them harness their skills as footballers. Do you find, though, that in an environment like that, you get heavily challenged, because sometimes people don't take lightly to the age factor?
That also brings me also to the way I approach things and I look at things. I tell you that had I not, one of the other things that I'm big into now is Stoicism. It's not a religion, but a philosophy. It's an ancient Greek and Roman philosophy that Mandela subscribed to, Malcolm X subscribed to. In fact, it's one religion that came through, and the book is called Meditations, written by Marcus Aurelius. But it's an old old philosophy. I think it was in the 1800s, if I'm not mistaken, where when Utata Nelson Mandela was in prison, he read the book. I mean, several times he speaks about the book in his biography and autobiography, Long Walk to Freedom. Malcolm X, when he was 20 years old and he was put in prison, he read the book, and at the time he was full of anger and resentment because he was on, and they say allegedly found guilty for burglary, which he felt was something that he had not committed. But he read the book, and it is said that the reason why he started wearing glasses, Malcolm X, was because he used to creep into small parts of his prison cell, the door, and when they would say 10 o'clock lights out, he would still read the book in the dark. And he'd have a dictionary next to him where he would try and find. I struggle also with the meanings of some of the words because they're huge, they're bombastic words and words that I never thought existed, but you also increase your capacity, your vocabulary also improves, and part of that, but just a basic understanding, and part of the virtues are having wisdom. One of the key cardinal virtues of Stoicism is wisdom, and the other being courage. Of course, wisdom in the sense that they explain it as understanding the good, the bad, expecting the bad, but understanding that there's some of the bad that is not within your control, and some of the things that like your reputation and how people see you, those are things that are beyond your control. So when I go into an environment like Chippa United, and I see the experienced players and ultimately the players that you speak about, who probably are within the same sort of age gap, you then say to yourself, can I control that? Can I control their perception of me, how they see me, how they look at me, whether they judge me on my age or my competence? I can't control that. What I can control are my skills, my attitude towards my work, my work ethic, and the quality of my coaching. That I can control. And then you start to focus more on the things that you can control, because that brings a little bit more happiness. And that's one of the key things with regards to Stoicism is inward happiness, inward control of the things that you can control, and trying your level best to be at peace with those things.
Is that why at times I would sense that you're very thick-skinned? Because as coaching age-wise, you are seen to be young, but you've almost developed that crocodile skin level of thickness that says to you that if you're going to be making it at the highest level, the noise, everything that is said around you cannot matter. I mean, how difficult was it to transition into a person to be like that? Because it takes a special power. It takes a special application. Football is not easy. It is cruel from whichever angle you look at it, especially if you're the center of attention as a coach of an established club or any club. It is hard. So how do you develop that level of, I can't even call it hard-headedness, but where you shut off the noise?
I think you've got to go through the hardships. My personality, to be honest, growing up and still today, I'm a very emotional person. I still take things. It's very difficult for me to brush things off. And the hardships have been very good for me, because particularly when I was at Pirates, because my entire football coaching career per se, as young as it was, but was always an sort of an upward trajectory of success, be it from Platinum Stars at such a young age at 24, assisting Coach Steve Gombella, and then moving to Sundowns into the youth, where I was just surrounded by top class players, and we won so much at Platinum Stars with the youth. We won so much at Sundowns with the youth, and we were extremely successful, even with regards to promoting players to the first team who have gone on to become a success, like your Percy's, your Madishas, even Kaya Shozi and them are doing very well in the NFT. So you start a little bit to believe in your own hype per se, Rob, and you start and there's a saying that I strongly believe in that says there's a curse in the rising star. There's a curse in the rising star, because once the star starts to believe in its own hype and its own noise, quickly once it diminishes and it disappears, and there's no one to make the noise because no one sees it. Now, what does it start to believe in? So it's important that you go through the difficulties where you develop this resilience, you develop this trust, and then you've got to find it somewhere else. You've got to look deeper than just the noise that comes from the people, because now the noise starts to disappear. Now the support, you start to look around for support, and you can't find as much support as when things were going well and you were at Sundowns and you were winning Champions League with Coach Pitso and such a talented group of players, or you were assistant to Micho and things were going well and you were in the final and 2 seasons in a row after a very difficult season for Pirates, where, I mean, the team was really struggling before we arrived. I mean, losing twice to SuperSport, 4-0, 6-2, 6-0 to Sundowns in one season and not even qualifying for the top 8 was a difficult season for the Buccaneers. It's without going through the process, the difficulties, it's very difficult to develop the character. You've got to be tested, and it's part of the process. I mean, we speak a lot about it, and we speak about being prepared to go through the development stages of our characters, and we've got to accept that without pressure, without being prepared to be cut, without heat, we can never develop, and that's ultimately the process of any sort of instrument or anything that belongs to nature. If it doesn't go through the process, you never get anything of substance out of it. So and we are just instruments, and similar instruments that belong to the universe, and we've got to be developed in a similar form, where we are put through the most difficult of challenges, and we've got to accept, and it's in that acceptance where, like again, I say that one of the cardinal aspects of Stoicism is that wisdom, when you see things beyond what they really are, and then you develop more of a desire, and you use it as a stimuli. You know, you use the events as something that stimulates you every single day to wake up and face different challenges every single day, because you understand that that's when growth happens.
One of the fascinating things that, in observing coaches and observing you, and especially when you ascended to an assistant coach position at Sundowns, was the thorough level of preparedness, whether it was going to statistics not only of Sundowns, but stats of the opposition, especially when you had to play on the continent. You know, Champions League asks of you to do more. We might not see it every day on our TV screens in South Africa, but if an Al Ahly you have to go play against, and I would know that you would know the names of the danger players, what they've done in the last couple of games, which is their stronger position, so that if defensively and Anil Ngongwa had to defend that person, which side is as weaker or stronger. Like, that level of preparedness is what you brought to the fore that maybe we'd never got from any other assistant coach before. What was it about that motivation to get you there, firstly? And how did you learn to be as thorough as you became, and that we knew about?
I think to answer your question, you always try to, and I already knew from the get-go that I was running a race where I a football technocrat, but I was a paraplegic in a lack of a better word, because I start the race with a disability that a lot of young other coaches possibly don't have, because of my age and because of the lack of a football playing history and a background. And with that, you've got to then look for other ways to make up that disadvantage. You've got to look for other ways to try to give yourself a niche in the industry. And with a lot of my travels, with a lot of interaction with some of the top assistant coaches, some of the top coaches in the world, in Europe, in South America, for an example, you then pick up a few traits and a few of the inside, and you can call them secrets if you like, but the reality is there's no secrets in football, because I think everybody has 24 hours in a day. But at the same time, I was also fortunate enough that I was in an environment that encouraged that sort of work, that encouraged that sort of depth and analysis. Because Coach Pitso is one that strongly believes in doing research and watching the opposition and finding as much information as possible. And the team of analysts that we had at Sundowns and that still is there at Sundowns with Gula, Mario, and Musi were also people that were extremely thorough with regards to the work, and they're looking for competitive advantages, small details that could easily give us, doesn't necessarily have to be directly influencing the result, but they give you an advantage during the 90 minutes. And I've always been one that believes that preparation eliminates fear. And when you give the players as much information about an opposition, you then create an environment that's around safety, an environment of saying, hey, I'm prepared. I go into this match, I'm prepared. I know what to expect from an Abu Trika, for an example. I've read so much about him, but now I face him for the first time. And but I know so much about him that it feels like I've played against him. So and that those minute details are the ones that 9 times out of 10 are the small details that give you a competitive edge during 90 minutes.
You mentioned assistant coach. I mentioned assistant coach. It maybe brings me closer to that whole, whether you call it a debate or not, but I would love your feelings about it. There's a school of thought that will say a person is geared to be an assistant, so there must be an assistant. And the person's geared towards being a head coach, so they should be a head coach. And I always look at the example of a Sir Alex Ferguson as a coach of Manchester United, and then Carlos Queiroz comes across and becomes the assistant coach to Fergie. And then Real Madrid, because they know the potential of a Carlos Queiroz outside of Fergie, then they give him a job at Real Madrid to be the head coach now at Real Madrid. But then Fergie doesn't plug the gap at Manchester United of the assistant coach. Whether he knew intuition or he knew that maybe it was going to be difficult for him across there at Real Madrid. But then, yes, long story short, they get rid of Queiroz, but Queiroz comes back to his old position as an assistant coach again to Fergie. So that's just a typical practical example of something that happened. In the same way, Manja Ncikazi and Steve Kompela were coach and assistant before, then the one ascended to being coach, didn't work out, and now Steve is back as head coach and Manja Ncikazi is back as an assistant. Do you subscribe to that, or is there, like your journey has taken you to now, where you've served your apprenticeship as the assistant, and now you're the head coach, although with the short-term aim at Chippa, but you were also a head coach at Orlando Pirates, although, again, short-term. What's your feeling around head coach, assistant coach, especially given your journey?
Honestly, I think the best assistant coaches, and I say this especially because now I know what I didn't know before. I can say to you that the best assistant coaches for me are the coaches that have ascended to head coach positions and then make that decision, and it must be a personal decision that they make to say, maybe not, but I can go towards a situation where now I can assist the head coach. And why I say that is because I think they've got a little bit more experience of the pressures and the stress that the head coach has got to deal with. Most of the time, assistant coaches are not even aware of some of the responsibilities and the duties of the head coach and the pressures that come with the position of being a head coach. And although a lot of power is delegated to the modern assistant coach, but there's still a lot of responsibility that goes beyond just the pitch. And a lot of responsibility with regards to, you can just imagine when you're the head coach of a big institution like Pirates, you go beyond just the four lines. You got to make decisions on so many things. You build relationships with national team coaches because you've got to manage that project and manage the international project and international players. And then there's also training programs, and there's marketing that needs to. So the head coach really is involved with a lot of roles and duties and portfolios that may not necessarily be visible to the naked eye. And I think once you're aware of those, and you know the stresses, the good, the bad, that comes with that, you're a bit more sympathetic with your head coach. And maybe that is a quality that I didn't have prior to being a head coach. I didn't have the empathy. I didn't have the feeling of saying, I can just imagine what this person is going through, and what results mean to the head coach, because once you go through the similar sort of process, you then understand when someone else goes through a similar process. You are then able to make an emotional connotation to the situation, and that's just my understanding of it. But if I look at it more personally, I think I don't close the door towards being an assistant coach again. I've had those discussions already, and those are things that we've spoken about with one or two other clubs, and I haven't closed the door. For me, I think now is just to focus on achieving the objectives we set for ourselves with Chippa, and then looking at what lies next with regards to the project. And the project for me must be a project that's going to allow us to be competitive, that's going to allow us to try to build something that's with substance, and that's got a playing style and a blueprint that is what I would think is what football or how football should be played. And also at the same time, must give more than anything else. Rob, must give happiness. Must be an environment where we feel valued and appreciated, and we can wake up every single day looking forward to get to the training field.
I know that every journey kind of becomes a lesson for a lot of people. For you, I mean, given the highs, the lows of everything that has happened, is there a singular thing that you would change right now of the journey that you've had, that you might have thought, okay, maybe that was premature, maybe this was a little too early, whatever the case might be? Because, like you say, you're also a very emotionally motive person. So people might get the wrong end of, you see, he's being naive, whatever the case might be. But for you, is there any part of the journey that you believe maybe could have been handled differently, or are you quite content with everything?
You can't when you serve your apprenticeship and when you're looking to grow, you can never, and it's worse, I think, with me. I see a psychologist every day, and she hammers me because I think every single day or every week when we have our sessions, she tells me that I'm too harsh on myself. I'm too critical of myself. But it's because I'm demanding. I've set such high standards, and in fact, even some of the players say to me, "It's very difficult to work with you because you're a perfectionist by nature, and you want things to go in a certain way, and when you don't get them to go in that way, you gain gain frustration and all that. But I think with my growth and also with a few of the therapeutic sessions, I've learned to understand that I've got to control my emotions. I've got to control my emotions better, and that there's power in emotional intelligence. There's power in being able to restrain from losing your cool or being ultra emotive about certain things, particularly in the public domain, and understanding that the space between what happens and how you respond to what happens is your power. And if you don't keep your power, then you allow what happens to then give you the reaction instead of you reacting to the situation in relation to the power that you have. And that is also about how you view things and the perspective you have on the events. So I would say to you, definitely, I mean, there's a couple of incidents that come to mind, even for an example, the game against Kaiser Chiefs that we lost 3-2 with the last minute penalty, which was not supposed to be a penalty, but and a lot of other events that transpired during the game, and with the Katsande tackles and some of the and I term it the thuggish behavior, because I'll never live that down. But it's a moment that when I reflect, I laugh about it. I laugh about it because I say, hey, is that me? But in hindsight, also when I look at it, I say, and when we analyze it, even with Bronwyn, my therapist, she says to me, these are some of the moments that say to you, when you look back and you say, these are some of the moments where you when you look back on them, you say, could have been handled a bit better, could have been handled with a bit more emotional control, with a better EQ, because once you relinquish your power, you can never be a leader that cannot keep inward power. And you can't look to control people or be a leader of people when you can't even look to lead yourself and control yourself. And that's one of the, in hindsight, and when looking back, is probably, and there's probably many others where I've been emotional, but I guess it also comes with a bit of age and mellowing down and losing the exuberance and the passion, and keeping it but directing it in a more controlled way, because EQ is very important. They always say that your IQ gets you your job, but your EQ keeps you in your job. And it's about very, very important how you build relations with people and how people how you perceive and control things that you accept in a way, and you have that wisdom of accepting that this is not within my control. So for an example, if destiny is not on your side, you can't control that, and there are times where you feel good, some things happen and they were just meant to happen. I couldn't control it, but I can control is my level of preparation, my the amount of hours that I invest into the game. Hopefully that gets me through onto the winning side. Particularly, I'm talking about in a coaching space. And then if things like that happen and a penalty is awarded in the 85th minute and under very difficult circumstances, then you look back and you say, I've done my best. Congratulations to the winning team, and you dust yourself up and you move again. And I've learned that with a lot of support from, as I say, from my therapist, and a lot of reading that I've done over the last couple of months. And one of the key things she always says to me, she says, when it's difficult and you in difficult moments, you observe the situation, but you don't absorb. You don't absorb it, and you don't allow it to become part of you. Because once you are emotional about it, it means it's in you now, and you're letting it out, because emotions are you. What happens is in the world, is in the outside, but how you react to it is you. So you don't absorb it, and you don't personalize it, and you don't take ownership of it. You see it as a situation and as an event, and as an event that particularly you had no influence onto, especially if you've done the best that you can with and your coaching, and that's the most important thing.
No, I mean, it makes absolute sense, and that's why I think as we wrap it up, Coach, and in appreciating a different angle, because I think the football angle is what we understand, but it's the Rhulani Mokwena angle of self that has come to the fore today. And maybe it explains, I suppose, your very famous and popular quotes, that football is the most important of the least important things in life. And that is what you espouse football to be. And maybe just as we wrap it up, maybe give me an understanding of why that for you is such a powerful, powerful quote.
Well, it's powerful in the sense that if you look at how we are and how we, especially us as coaches, and maybe even generally football lovers. I mean, you see a lot of people when their teams don't win, their relationships are broken, and that there's a lot of tension in the house, and people don't eat, and there's a lot of suffering, But the reality also is that when you start to look at football in that sense, you then understand that football is the most important of the least important things in life. So in other words, the things that don't really matter, football is one of those things that don't really matter in relation to your relationships, in relation to how you treat people, which is again one of the cardinal characteristics of Stoicism, which is morality. Football is not more important than treating people well, and being a humble person, and being a good person in society, and having good, healthy relationships with your friends, your family, and sustaining those. And it's very difficult because we sometimes allow football to invade that space, because as soon as football comes into that space, then it affects relationships, it affects your sleeping patterns, it causes depression, and I speak from a lot of experience with regards to that, because you devote so much of your time into football that you've got no time for anything else. You've got no time for family. You wake up, you're thinking football. You go to sleep, you're thinking football. You when you go to sleep, there's a notepad on the side of the table, and you're engulfed by trying to find solutions every single day, and trying to think about different ways to solve different problems, to get your team to play, and different training methodologies, and what better time to think about that than now? I mean, what's...
Well, I suppose, Coach, as you say, no better time than now in terms of getting the mindset there. And I hope, President brings the levels down to one. I've been thinking about you there, Coach, stuck in with your 2 golf shirts and 2 pairs of socks there. You need to fly back to Johannesburg now, and let's do some serious shopping this side. But I want to thank you so much, man, for giving so much of your heart, your intellect, and for making Marawa TV understand you that much better as well. Good luck with the project there at Chippa United, and look forward to more conversations with you, Coach.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity, and was a great honor and a privilege to be within your space.
Thank you so much there. That's the coach at Chippa United, Rhulani Mokwena. As I said, different angle, different touch, different approach, but loving the energy that is there. Subscribe, like, whatever you want to do. Good luck, nice luck, like, Marawa TV.